Welcome back to The Creative Edge, the podcast on all things AI and creative effectiveness. Today, the episode, I think we're on episode 6 now, time's flying by, is called From AI Hype to Operational Reality, What Marketers Need to Do Next. And today, we're joined by Anastasia Leng, the founder and CEO of CreativeX, and Steve Knight? King?
You naturally learned my name.
Cut that one out. Steve King, founder and CEO of Dragonfly, and also our boss.
Good start,
Hi,
Tom.
Steve.
Welcome, both. Thank you very much for joining. Anastasia, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself and CreativeX a little bit as well?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Anastasia. I'm the founder and CEO of CreativeX. CreativeX is a creative observability platform where we measure every creative that brands are running. We help them understand what's happening, govern it, and then ultimately operationalize the decisions they want to make so that their entire creative operation improves. Other fun facts, I'm a big reader. I'm an aspiring but very bad tennis player. And I don't know, that's all I got. All the fun facts.
Maybe
see
you at Wimbledon next year. And also, CreativeX is a great partner to Dragonfly as well.
Oh, absolutely. Right back at you.
We really like having you.
Did you want to do a quick intro as well, Steve?
Well, I think if we've got this far down the podcast and we don't know who Dragonfly is, we should probably have a little bit of a chat. But and maybe I could just talk a little bit about Anastasia and the relationship we have through CreativeX.
Definitely.
And Dragonfly. So you guys have had an amazing vision, I think, from the start, about having a one connected platform across for our customers. And I guess what we're going to talk about today is that AI and creative and measurement is really complex. There's lots of different amazing little tools. And I think what I love about your vision and working, the two companies working together, is that we're connected together so that customers can use us both at the same time without having to scramble around trying to find all the logins.
Absolutely. I think part of the challenge is that, everyone, when they look at the industry, they tend to take very cognitive shortcut views, and anything that sounds like it has the word creative or data in it, they automatically assume you compete. But actually, creative effectiveness and creative measurement is much more comprehensive. And to get a 360 view, I think you need to work with multiple partners. You won't get 100% of it from CreativeX, I'll tell you that right now.
And likewise, a Dragonfly, what she said.
Amazing. And you two were both at Cannes a couple of weeks ago. First of all, was it as hot as everyone said it was?
Oh my God, so hot.
Damn hot.
So hot. When are we going to recognize that no one wants to see their coworkers this sweaty? I mean, really, right?
Yeah, it was.
It crosses some boundary that I feel like should not be crossed.
We had the same in Barcelona, didn't we?
Did.
Yeah.
And customers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. A couple of key themes coming off the back of Cannes that we wanted to explore in a little bit more detail today. The kind of concept of AI fatigue, maybe a little bit, and moving beyond the hype. From wow, this is amazing AI, to a workflow and how that actually, what that entails. And Dragonfly and CreativeX kind of like thoughts on LLMs as well, which I think a couple of customers kind of asked you about as well back in Cannes. And also look ahead and looking at the next few years and what marketers kind of should do next as well. Did you want to go into the first?
Sure. Yeah, I think quite like an opening question. Over the past few years, obviously AI has become a sort of buzzword, and actually we're going to come on to in a few seconds about how it's actually probably becoming quite fatigued. And actually, sort of on that sense, it's definitely become more of, will AI perhaps replace me as a marketer, to now, okay, it's definitely going to improve performance, but how can I make sure that I work with it operationally and strategically? What's your guys' thoughts on what you had from Cannes in how AI is perceived within the market now? Anastasia, if you'd like to start, and then Steve, love to hear your thoughts after.
Sure, yeah. So I definitely think there is fatigue, but I don't think the fatigue is with AI. I think the fatigue is with AI theater. I think, look, you go to a lot of these panels at Cannes, and we actually had customers and brands who left the whole event early because they found that the content this year was generally quite unhelpful. It's out of the same buzzwordy things. And look, the generous interpretation, I think, of this is that for the first time in maybe since the digital revolution, no one actually knows what's going to happen. But we stand on these public stages where everyone's videotaping and we feel very compelled to say something smart. And as a result, we say nothing of very meaningful substance. So I think, again, it's more of the fatigue with the theater. I think we've also outgrown a bunch of the analogies. Like, AI is your co-pilot, it's not humans versus AI, it's humans and AI. I think the reality is initially the challenge was getting people to not see AI as a threat. I think we're past this now. So a lot of these analogies have run their course, but we haven't yet come up with new ones that will get people to think differently about what's actually happening.
I definitely went to that talk, or a few of those talks. I'm probably slightly more optimistic. I did a lot of walking around in it. We didn't have a lovely area like you had to go to, so I spent a lot of time just wandering around. I was impressed about how much like data now takes part in the creative process. When I went through all the, when I saw all the designs that won and how much they paid attention to some of the data elements, which really got me excited because, of course, that's the world that we live in. And I liked that people just were they were asking questions for the first time of how to put this together, as you said, not just like huge buzzwords or like cost cutting or like the kind of like stuff which maybe I heard last year. It was like, look, okay, I get this now. Like, how can I use you guys? How can you work with CreativeX much better? How do I do that? So you're right. I think it's past that acceptance. You're right. What that also means, if you go on stage and you're not in it, you can look quite foolish. So I can imagine that.
So do you think then, obviously, these buzzwords of, AI as the co-pilot, moving from that into more of an operational, strategic conversation, what do those conversations look like? Have you guys had any of those, started to have any of those at Cannes? And maybe a little sort of framing into what they've looked like.
Yeah, so I think if you stick with the co-pilot analogy for a second, and we take this analogy to its extreme, right? I'm literally in the cockpit with a co-pilot. Steve's my co-pilot. We need to fly and land this plane. Like, in that scenario, we would have very clear roles and responsibilities of here are the parts of the process that you run, here's the parts of the process that I run, here's when you take the steering stick. I don't know. That's why most of my analogies fail. I always go into territory I am not equipped to talk about. But so there are these clear roles and responsibilities that are established up front in order for this co-pilot relationship to actually work. That hasn't happened. Right now, we're just sort of putting AI in and trying to sprinkle human magic on top and hoping that's the recipe. So I think where the conversations have become much more interesting is that organizations who I think have lent in early understand that it is not about it's not a tech problem. AI is fundamentally a change management and an organizational management problem. In order to roll it out, you need to have clean data. You need to have very clear standards. You need to have defined roles and responsibilities for all your teams. If those things exist, you're just basically scaling ambiguity, and that becomes more detrimental to the organization than before AI because you're moving faster.
I love that. I saw it in a different way as well. I saw a lot of people had built an AI strategy, and they were very proud of it. And then, but not really. I didn't think that it isn't the right way around. You've got to work out what your company strategy is. What are you important for? What are you trying to represent? And then you build a technology and AI strategy around it. And I felt like people had got an AI strategy, looked at it, realized it had moved on so quickly since they wrote it, and then we're starting again. I also think, like, macro-wise, I don't know whether you found the same, but like CPG's been tough. Like, pretty much all of our customers have had to make cost cutting.
Yes.
The departments, I read somewhere that 25% of insight teams on average in the large CPGs have been affected or gone. And I feel like that's such a painful process for the industry that I felt that we've maybe been a bit distracted. And it was really nice for the first time going to Cannes and hearing people go, that was a really, really awful experience, but we've stabilized our cost base now and we need to invest in tools because there's less of us to do more of the growth. And I just thought about this just a little bit of, like, after such a horrendous, in CPG, really difficult time for everyone, that these little shoots of growth and also thinking about the problems and really thinking about how AI could help them. So I totally agree with what you said and sort of just saw it from an interesting but very parallel perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this conversation is really interesting because our typical guests that we get on the podcast would normally be, representatives from CPGs. But speaking to you two, I think it's really important to understand sort of what we think the barriers for this working AI operationally are within CPGs, FMCGs, etc. Is it the fact of a tool having lack of ROI, or do you think typically it's actually the structure of the large organization. Do they still not have the right structure to operationally work with a tool like ours as a creative partner, sort of as a workflow? What do you think are the barriers?
Well, my 2 cents is, look, ROI is obviously very important, but people treat ROI as the next step after onboarding or the next step after making a decision to use a tool, whereas the reality, the next step is readiness. Like, is your organization actually ready and capable of embedding a tool in the technology that requires you to operate differently than you operated before? And this is not like the tech part, I think in most cases is the easy bit, right? You buy a tech, it does what it does. How you get an organization, the likes of which we work with, which are thousands of marketeers, to do something differently that they weren't doing before, like that's the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Right, and that readiness is often something many leaders don't think about until the train's already, barreling down the tracks. Whereas I think everything should really start with, what is the change we want to see? How do we expect the teams to work differently? Do they understand, why we're doing this change, what it means for them? Are they motivated? Have we created the right incentives for them to be motivated, to become much more data literate, creative and insights teams? If those things aren't there, no tech is going to survive.
Well said. And even as a smaller business as Dragonfly, we're
Yeah.
implementing Claude and other tools and joining our data together. And, you think, oh, right, I've got this already. I can just produce this report. And you find out the data is just slightly wrong. Maybe the context it was saved in over there or in the wrong format. And the AI can't work any of that out. It doesn't understand the context of your business. So if you think about that in mass, and you see these big companies, it reminds me of, do you remember the days of the unified database where everyone's like, right, we're going to build a unified database of all our data and like what you can put in it, everything, like literally everything. And about 2 years later, having spent like $6 or $7 million, they're like, we haven't actually done anything with, we're about a quarter of the way through and we're nowhere near. So I sense there's probably that little bit of feeling going on at the moment where we just have to be, it's quite hard to get all your data sorted if you're a really big business. It's hard if you're a small business. And like maybe just being a bit more targeted in what you need to do might be the way of operationally getting some success.
Quite an open-ended question. What do you think we can be doing to support our customers at this stage in these conversations?
Why do you give me the hard ones?
Yeah.
So is it a ladies first situation here?
You go first.
I'm kidding. What do I think we can be doing with our customers? I think what Steve said is actually really prescient in terms of challenging the customer to understand and articulate their strategy before jumping straight to the AI or the tech strategy, because all of this is a means to an end to achieving something else. I think something we've invested in CreativeX, which is perhaps very tactical, is we've been training all of our client success and account-facing teams on the art of change management.
Great.
So I've said to them, it is no longer good enough to be the best at knowing our tech and all of that, but we've started really thinking about, how does change management happen? What does it mean? What are the things to look out for? How do you do evangelism, education? So we've broken this up into a process, and we're still learning a lot here, but this is a necessary skill that I want them to be better at than other companies that we're competing with.
And have you seen any kind of initial results from that at all?
We have had multiple companies tell us that we have been one of the fastest globally scaled tools inside their organization.
Well done.
We've gotten awards from the like of Unilever. Diageo has said we have by far been the most adopted tool globally across their organization that's been led by the insight team. So we have gotten a lot of these recognitions. I don't want to rest on our laurels. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but the test for us is, can an organization actually scale this globally in under 12 months? And that's not, for these organizations that we work with, that is not for the faint of heart. So the fact that we're getting these done, to me, tells us, we're on the right track.
Well, it seems like it's really working then.
Well, still a lot of kinks to be worked out. But we're getting there.
I think that's incredible. I think that's really, really to be proud of. The thing we're seeing at the moment, probably earlier on in the cycle, is, you mentioned it earlier, is just this idea of creative effectiveness is quite a wide topic. And I feel sorry for some of our customers because they come to our website, any of our frenemies' websites, and it'll all say the same words. So that education, I think, us spending a bit of time and effort and thought into educating the market on how we play together, what to use, what sort of order to put things together in, how to think about things, because there's no book in it yet. That's a great thing about what we do. We're actually literally writing it as we go day to day. So effort in that is really where I think we're trying to put.
One of my feelings coming out of Cannes is it was the first time when I went this year where I saw the work. right? And some of the work was really emotional, right? It really made me feel something. And one of the things I recognize, and I had a chat about this with our team right after I came back from Canada, is a lot of the work in our space, the marketing work, it doesn't make you feel anything. Marketers are people. Like, they want to feel something too. And if we're in the business of creative, I think you're right. Like, you go on 10 websites in the space and they all kind of get lost in the sameness. We're very guilty of that. But I think we've forgotten that our job also is to produce work not that just informs and educates, but also that makes people feel. So that's a challenge I've put in front of our marketing team for the next year.
Well said.
One of the things that you mentioned when you came back from Cannes, Steve, and it kind of really stuck with us, I think, and want to kind of explore it a little bit further, is that kind of like from wow to workflow in terms of AI. And you described AI as moving from a wow to a workflow. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's very similar to what the discussions we've been having and are now connected to on is, there was maybe last year and the year before this like really kind of excited, not quite sure what's going to happen, feeling about AI and running around, and maybe that some of it's bubbled to annoyance in this year. But I got a lot more targeted questions this year, like really like, how do you work with CreativeX, and like, what does each bit do, and how do I think about you guys, and not just with us, all the way through from white space and insight through to everything. I sense businesses, they're smart, right? That's why they do what they do. They're beginning to put together this workflow in their minds about how they can sort of go end to end in product creation and get their marketing and materials out. So I had a lot of conversations, and even outside of Dragonfly and CreativeX's range, in like, how should I think about this sort of workflow? And that got me really excited because like, there's on average 60 SaaS platforms our marketeers have to use now. I don't even know my banking details, so like, how on earth they actually know, with a 60 login. So this idea of workflow and how AI can really help on that just got me really excited.
Yeah.
Would you add anything into that, Anastasia?
No, I just wanted, did you come up with wow to workflow? That's a good use of, was it alliteration?
I thought it was a bit cheesy. I thought
Oh,
it was a dad
really?
joke.
No, I liked it. I liked it. I was like, oh, this feels headline ready.
That's because we both got kids now. We think anything's funny.
Why do you think the focus has kind of changed then from those kind of like a more traditional tech stack and those kind of like singular siloed pieces of tech to those workflows?
I don't think technology's changed. Sorry, Tom.
How do you think the thinking has changed?
Oh, I got you. I feel that. I think probably just because it has to. Like and we talked about ROI, and I really agree with what you're saying. You can't just jump there. You can't say have tool. ROI is like having a business plan, like, and growth. You've got to. There's a lot of there's a lot of sort of work involved in that. I think there's just been a lot more effort in people trying to understand that they've got to be efficient and these tools should work together. And actually, do you know what? Holding us up to standard. We are technology providers. We can't keep on like having our own windows where we expect people to climb in and out of all the time to get somewhere. Like, we've got to connect them all together for people. So I feel it's kind of a natural thing that should be happening.
I think the other thing that's happened is, if you look at a lot of marketing organizations, they've historically worked through the unit of a campaign.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have this quite episodic workflow where a campaign starts with a brief, then content gets created, it gets traffic, it gets analyzed, resulted, stop, next campaign, etc. I think one of the things that's different about some of the technology that's being developed now is it creates a potential for things to shift from a campaign-based way of working to a more always-on, continuous way of working. So you move from episodic to kind of like evergreen workflows. And so I think in order to do that successfully, you need to really have the operational infrastructure and the connectivity in order to be able to do this. Otherwise, you're always going to be stuck in this campaign way of working.
How big of a shift do you reckon that is for brands and kind of like our clients and customers?
It's a massive shift. It's a huge shift, right? Because we have not worked in this way. The notion that the car is essentially always driving and never stops. By the way, like, I don't think anyone is ready for that reality today, organizationally speaking. But I think it introduces the potential of something like this, which creates an opportunity for us to think through what does evergreen marketing really look like, right? And we're seeing some folks experiment with this in very small ways, whether it's through some of their organic channels where, and I remember when I first heard this, I thought it was blasphemous, but now I can see some of the genius behind it. They said, we have a number of assets that we're deploying regularly that are not associated with any campaign or any campaign objective. They're just there as a way for us to sort of experiment and build and see what happens when you have this sort of continuous content running that's being learned from.
I love that evergreen example. Is that yours as well? I feel like we're learning a lot here, aren't we? Well, sorry. I think that's a really nice vision. And when we did a session in Dragonfly when we were trying to look into the future, and for one of our product sessions, and as we were talking about the way the world had changed and all the, you've got your phone, you've got the devices. Even in Cardiff now we have electronic outdoor advertising. Like you're being hit so much, and at such speed that in a way I can see your idea there, like this evergreen idea. You need to be on all the time in order to get into all these channels, and it is an expectation now that you're going to be served in this way. So in a way it's inevitability, but you're right, it's so different from the way we used to do things and the way we used to run campaigns that we'll all get dragged there somehow, won't we?
Maybe, right? I mean, certainly the platforms are pushing towards this. I think the difficulty is, again, coming back to the roles and responsibilities, right? If you have this evergreen process, I think we have been talking, at least the current narrative around AI is, well, humans come in to just, quote, approve the work. But I don't think that's right. No. I don't think people as the bouncer at the door is the right working model, not necessarily the most scalable working model. If you think about this episodic to evergreen shift, I think it's more about, how do you architect the entire building so you know at which point, which doors open and who has the codes and all of that. So things actually flow throughout. And I think everyone's in the very early stages of trying to think.
I was just thinking about what you said as well, as we work with creative people. Calling them, thinking of them as bouncers in the door is the worst way.
Absolutely. They don't want that job.
Yeah,
they
this is not the job. But the idea of being able to step above this huge amount of content, evergreen, pumpkin thrown around, and being able to be the architect of it, I find that quite an exciting vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they do too. And this way, I think that the bouncer at the door thing has not resonated with them. And they're like, fine, yeah, AI is my co-pilot, but you're relegating me to the kind of work that I don't actually want to be doing.
Yeah.
Yes, and what they would rather do is coming back. I'm having to think a lot about flying, which is a new metaphor category for me. They probably want to be in charge of setting the destination and to some extent creating some standards for what the flight plan should look like, but then letting some of the machines do the other bits. But I think inherently, again, we have been, partially because the demo is the sexiest, promoting use cases that aren't psychologically aligned to the way that many folks in these jobs want to work today. That's my 2 cents.
Well said. I'm looking forward to your dashboard that overlooks all creative in the style of an aeroplane.
So we're working on that.
Tom and I attended Shop Talk a couple of weeks before you guys went to Cannes. One of the biggest themes that came out of the back of it was LLMs and agentic commerce. We actually had the delight of doing a podcast with one of our clients, Amy, who is Global Conversion Lead from Appella, all around this topic. So this will tie in quite nicely. Some of the key themes that we spoke about with Amy was all around, and I know I hate to say this word, but empathy and how you need to still stay, think about empathy and the role that LLMs play, and how if you're purchasing certain things, you still need to think about how a human is really empathetic in that moment. I'd love to know, and Steve, I know that there was a lot of conversation within Cannes around LLMs and the role of LLMs within the creative process. Would you be able to give me some highlights of what was discussed and things that you spoke to about people?
Certainly, and I first of all want to say congratulations, Barcelona, for going on a run in the morning. They did a run club, which is epic
impressive
way to do that, and then did all these conversations. So I was even more impressed. It's super interesting, isn't it? And I think maybe we all. I'm just going to continue what you said, Anastasia, because I think maybe we all, when they first came out, thought that these things are going to come out with amazing creative. Yeah. I think we're past that now. What we realise is what they really did is automating in a really advanced, incredible way large amounts of creative. And if we follow this pathway you and I are talking about now, where you're going to need that on every channel, on board at any time, you're going to need these little buddies to help you create this creative. Otherwise, you're not going to hit the creative in the way that people want to see it and consume it and have it a bit later. So I think I feel better about it now. I've been on a journey of, oh my God, my wife's a creative. Is she ever going to go back to work? Another topic on that. Where is the humans in this? Because at the end of the day, if you take away the business and everything, we are humans living on the world, and we all need something to do, and we all need to enjoy life, and we all need that. So I've been on that whole kind of emotional roller coaster imposter. I'm now really excited about what LLMs can do, and I think what CreativeX can do and what Dragonfly can do. What Dragonfly can do is just make sure that when you bring that creative, it is going to be seen, it's going to make impact, it's going to be remembered. We can do that in a large automated way with our friends, the LLMs, who can take large variations while the humans sit there and think of the amazing ideas who are going to fly their plane across the world. See, I carried that on.
Thank you. Yeah, I really struggle with the language here because I think it's sort of been co-opted to the way people are talking about it is like what separates us from these machines is, quote, the empathy, right? But the way it's being talked about is the machines will do everything up to a certain point, and then we will come in, and because we are, quote, human, we will sprinkle some of our empathy fairy dust on the final thing, and there we go. We've had our, and actually, I guess I don't think that's right. Like, I think what we are forgetting, and this is something that really terrifies me, is that in our work as marketeers, empathy comes from a deep understanding of the customer. And you know, my belief in something I say to the team all the time when they'll come to me with a suggestion, I'll say, what are your primary sources, right? And so if you're not talking to a customer to get that information, then secondary and tertiary sources, like, don't get me wrong, they're fine in certain cases, but you need to also remember to have that connectivity to your primary sources. There's a lot of talk in the industry right now about, you know, synthetic users, and we're actually moving in certain areas further and further away from, quote, what I think of is real empathy, which is sitting down with our consumers, understanding who they are, understanding the position they're in. Because the reality is, in a marketing organization, for years, we've had what has been documented as the marketer empathy gap. Most of the folks in these jobs are not the folks who buy the products, right? Like, yeah. And so we, you know, I read some stat the other day, which is something along the lines of like 80% of people worry before making a credit card purchase that they're going to go into an overdraft, right? For a CPG industry, it's a lot of their consumers. I would argue most marketers working on this are not worrying about going into an overdraft. So there's this element of how do you continue to be really, really close to the consumer? Because that is the empathy part, not the like, this makes me feel something at the end.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people talk about it and they say, oh, you still need human oversight, but I think it's a lot more than oversight.
Correct.
It's not just oversight, and yeah, I'd sort of love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, is that true? It's not just oversight. It's not the final approval. It's the whole process.
Absolutely. I think look, this is unfortunately a cliche, and I haven't found a better way to say it. A lot of people have said that, you know, it's not really about AI, it's the judgment, right? I don't know if you've had this experience, but at work, at CreativeX, we all have access to the same LLM tools, right?
Yeah.
Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. But you can put the same question and get a completely different answer.
Absolutely.
And so I've had instances where someone on my team will come to me and they'll give me a piece of work that they've done, and I'll say, did you use an LLM to do this? And they'll say, yeah, I thought that was allowed. I'm like, yeah, it's allowed, but the work is still crap because it's not grounded in the understanding of what the customer is. And that's your job. Your job is to understand the customer and give the LLM that context. Otherwise, it's just going to be very fluent and convincing in what it says, but it doesn't actually mean it's tied to the thing that the customer cares about.
You have made me realize, I think, that I've been talking about this entire concept about context.
Yes.
How important that is, not just in how we use LLMs, but marketeers use image generation. I realize that in maybe marketing we've been missing it for ages as well, to your point. I remember one of my favourite ever marketeers, a chap called Greg Lyons, who worked at Walkers in the UK, and he just made us feel stupid once in a PR conference because we were going on talking about the Times, and he reminded me that 80% of people who eat Walker's Crisp read The Sun. So the way that we were thinking and talking about our messaging was absolute rubbish compared to our customers. So we didn't have the context of what was on the ground, and I think that we're just maybe blindly going into the same thing with AI, going, why hasn't it got the context? I don't think maybe we've even asked that of ourselves, as
That's right.
to your point earlier.
And coming back to Tom's related point about sort of organizational readiness, I think one of the hardest things, one of the biggest things organizations need to fix before I believe they're really ready to drive fast on the AI train is memory. Many organizations lack true, deep, resilient memory structures, which is why we keep learning the same things over and over again, and yet not feeling like the bar is consistently getting raised, right? So the lack of this memory structure is actually a very big impediment to being able to do what we want to do. And this is that kind of moment, like your moment of recognizing, yes, this is our consumer, it's a son. like that sits in your head, but how does that become operational so that everyone going forward is like, actually, the consumer is not exactly like me. They are different, and I am here to service them. So I need to take their preferences, their criteria into consideration for every bit of work that I do.
I think going back to Cannes, I love that, because going back to Cannes, you reminded me when you said that one of the best things I saw actually wasn't part of Cannes, it was the Insight Lighthouse. And they had Byron Sharp at sort of 8 in the morning, so kind of bleary-eyed, kind of walked in, and have you ever seen him live?
I haven't, but
Oh,
I get why you get up at 8 a.m.
He is
for Byron.
punchy, yeah. but although everyone was talking about AI, he would always bring it back to core marketing concepts like that, like segmentation, understanding your customer, like the mental availability, physical availability, and it's really funny. It's the only place I actually heard those things again in Cannes, but it did remind me that this is the same kind of concepts we need to fix and get right, rather than worry about AI.
There's a great quote from Jeff Bezos, which I go back to all the time, regardless of what people think about the man, where he says, every journalist always asks me, what are the things that will change? And he said, no one ever asks me what won't change. And he said, I always build my business on the things that I don't believe will change in the next 20 years, because that is the only way to build a business.
Brilliant. Automate everything. Love it.
And before I hand over to Tom to sort of ask a few final questions, is there anything other topics that we haven't covered today that were really prevalent at Cannes? And Steve, I know I've sort of already caught up with you post-Cannes. Anastasia, is there anything that sort of springs to mind for you that we haven't covered today?
This may take us down a different rabbit hole, so appreciate we may not want to go down there. But I think one of the things I heard a lot in sort of closed-door conversations and sort of smaller chats was a combination of feeling that there's a disconnect between the executive leadership and their thinking of AI versus what the folks at the sort of middle management layers actually believe that they need. I think the sentiment is coming from the fact that, right now, if you go in and say you're using AI, especially if you say you've made AI-based headcount reductions, you will likely get some sort of stock price bump. So there's this narrative on that and demonstrating to use AI. Versus on the other hand, one of the things I heard marketers say repeatedly is, we don't need more content.
Yeah.
Whoever has perpetuated the myth that our problem is more content has certainly done us a great disservice. That is not our issue at the moment. Yeah. So I think that's one thing, is there's this sort of tension. There always is in an organization. There has to be in order for them to be healthy between, it sounds like, the upper echelon and the folks doing the work every day. The other thing, and this is again perhaps a bit more psychological, but what I got a sense of is this like very deep fatigue. I don't know if you sense that. Not with AI in general, but I think it's been a lot for people.
The last 18 months in CPG have been awful.
Yeah.
I think worse than COVID, I feel, in some cases.
Yes. And so there is a combination of real macro financial pressures with a combination of we're learning a technology that is new, where the current public narrative is very much this will do all of our jobs and take all sense of professional identity from us, combined with the fact that we don't actually know where it's going. So we're sort of driving with no clear destination in mind. Wow. And so when people kind of let loose for a second, it was just like, I am tired.
Yeah.
And the world itself has been bumpy, haven't it? Particularly if you're even if you're a human at the moment, it's been difficult to catch up. As we were saying earlier, the only good thing about CPG is that we all take a long August break. So hopefully everyone can come back in September fully optimistic again.
I'm going to put my holiday request in now.
Damn it.
Anastasia, I love that bit that you said first around, the conversation upwards to leadership. I had a conversation with an e-com director of a large beverage brand last week, and he said, I'd love to understand from your guys' perspective how I manage those conversations upward. If I want to purchase tech, if I want to create a whole new workflow, if I want to make a whole new tech stack. So I think that probably we don't have time for it today, but I think that it's definitely such an interesting conversation to have at a separate podcast.
I think a lot of those kind of like middle teams as well have just been told to implement AI.
Yeah,
that's right.
But charge.
Not
absolutely.
got any kind of I don't know, ideas behind it or any strategy from leadership about what that actually entails. It's just go look at it, otherwise we're going to fall behind, and not have any strategy behind it.
Yes.
You mentioned this, but I do love this. Is also in the nicest way, the way businesses work, because you have this top-down pressure from shareholders or owners, and execs who are trying to go, okay, so yeah, I'm going to cut costs using AI because they know that will, help them on their up. And then, there's the guys who actually do the work, who understand how these things work. And we've all got to find a way to meet in the middle, because without it, we haven't got a business.
Yeah.
So I do, like, I sympathize with everyone on these sides, but this is very, very normal when a big change like this happens.
Yeah.
Moving on to some quick fire questions to finish.
You go first. Men first on the firing line.
If we were to kind of like move past the hype, Steve, then what excites you about how AI could change the way that marketing teams work?
Well, what the original promise was, which was actually, do you know what? There's so much more happening in the world, the way we have to see the world and react to the world. Wouldn't it be great if a load of it was automated? Wouldn't it be great? And I love the evergreen idea, that I haven't been able to say it as effectively as you said it before. It's been in my head, but I love the idea of changing the way marketing works. It's a continuous conversation, creating mental availability for all of your customers and not campaign-led. I think that's really cool vision.
Love that. Anything to add, Anastasia?
I think the thing I'm most excited about is having built CreativeX. I think that I struggle with as running the company is that creating institutional memory and having everyone always be on the same page is a never ending. It feels like the Sisyphusian task where no matter how close to the top of the mountain you go, the boulder always rolls back down. And so what I'm most excited about is I feel like this technology is actually the first time that I've seen something that has made me feel we can create an institutional memory layer that will help increase the chances of us all operating from the same shared ground truth and shared reality. And I think if you have that, a lot of things become really powerful, because most organizations fail because there's a slow and steady drift in focus and they get further and further away from what's needed. So I see this as one of the possible ways to start to really tackle that problem.
Love that. Thank you. One piece of advice to marketing leaders looking to embrace AI. Do you want to start, Anastasia?
Yeah, I'm going to build on something you said, actually, which is don't have an AI budget. Think about what your strategy is and what you actually want to achieve and where AI can help, and funnel it into that. Technology for technology's sake is a shiny toy that you'll play with for 6 to 18 months that will eventually get spat back out of the organization. So start problem first and then determine if AI is the right solution. But don't have an AI budget. It will just lead you to make short-term AI-based decisions.
Well, you stole mine, so instead what I'll do is I'll tell a story.
What she said.
And it's more really about the understanding how and when these things and how they'll change in time. So I will never forget this. In the 70s, you probably heard this, but Microsoft introduced Microsoft Excel. There's this big excitement because they could see the vision, how this could change companies forever. They flew in, rather rarely, all of the finance teams from Microsoft across the world to release it within Microsoft, like good product people within your own company. And they presented this Excel and they showed, pivot tables and charts and the speed you could do these things, where these guys were, just scrambling around with calculators, and people started to leave. And there was just this, at the end, they were like, well, what's wrong? They were like, well, this is ridiculous. This is going to take all our jobs. It's just going to be a CFO and no finance people. Why are you presenting this to us? What kind of rude, horrible thing is this to present to us, the people who do the work? And you fast forward today, and finance teams are probably even bigger than they were back in the 1970s. So of course there will be a really big change, but there are also the natural economics of life. The go back to norm will come in as well, where everyone will have these tools and they'll become a norm, and we'll all go back to the same thing, waiting for the next revolution as well. So just understanding and not being too panicked, that we're just part of a process, part of a system, part of a transformation, and try and enjoy it a bit on the way through.
Amazing. And what a note to end on. I think that's all for today. Thank you very much, guys. Do you want to do
a dance? What happens at the end?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is going to be great.
Now's the time to do the dance, guys.
This is the talent portion of the program.
No, thanks everyone for listening. Like and subscribe.